Greetings, true champions of the cause. Welcome to Starplanet One Shots. I am your host, the tenebrous Arius. In today's episode, we will be showcasing a science fiction sword and sorcery story from the universe 1983, featuring the classic 1930s pulp character, Taylia of Wayne. Just Another Day in the Galaxy, a Taylia tale, was first published in Stories of Science and Sorcery by Ace Books in 1981, and later reimagined in comic book form by Heavy Metal magazine later that year. Now, dear travelers, let's begin. A lone figure moved through the desolate Alrayan moon wasteland, shrouded in a black cloak that fluttered lightly in the cold breeze. The figure dragged something heavy behind, its form obscured by the cloak's folds. Cresting a small hill, the figure paused, revealing a silhouette against the backdrop of a vast, star-speckled sky. Below lay the moon colony, a cluster of buildings bathed in the pale light of the celestial body. Taylia of Wayne, the cloaked figure, looked down upon the colony with a sigh of relief, her breath misting in the frigid air. Her face winced with pain as the cut on her shoulder throbbed, a harsh reminder of her recent battle. She glanced back at the ancient black robot she had defeated, its metallic limbs now lifeless and trailing in the moon dust behind her. Steeling herself, Taylia began her descent toward the colony, each step measured and steady. As she approached, the townspeople noticed her, their eyes widening in fear. Whispers spread quickly, and soon a murmur of alarm rippled through the crowd. They had heard tales of the metallic ghost, a fearsome entity that had been terrorizing the areas surrounding the colony. The sight of a dark, cloaked figure fit the description all too well. Taylia sensed their fear and understood their mistake. She paused at the colony's edge and pulled back her hood, allowing her long red hair to cascade down her shoulders. The vibrant color caught the light, and murmurs of recognition replaced the whispers of fear. Her striking features, though hardened by the harshness of her journey, were undeniably human. She unfastened the cloak, letting it fall to the ground and revealing her warrior's attire. Her metallic breastplate, though battered, gleamed with a defiant shine, and the ancient crystal on her chest still glowed faintly. The animal skin loincloth and furred red boots spoke of her resilience and the rugged life she led. Her sword, now sheathed, hung at her left hip, a silent testament to her skill and strength. The townspeople hesitated, unsure of how to react. Taylia took a step forward, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her sword. "I have faced the enemy," she said, gesturing to the defeated robot behind her. "This ancient machine is the metallic ghost you all feared," Taylia declared, her voice resonating through the crowd. With a final defiant gesture, she threw the robot's lifeless body in front of her, the metallic clatter echoing ominously in the stillness. "It has now been vanquished." She scanned the gathering townspeople, her eyes searching for one particular individual. "Where is your scrap lord?" she demanded, her tone brooking no argument. A murmur rippled through the crowd until a tall, rugged man stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. "I am the scrap lord," he announced, his voice a deep rumble. He parted the throng with a few strides, stopping in front of Taylia and the defeated robot. "How much will you give me for this?" Taylia asked, pointing to the robot. "Its emerald power crystal is undamaged and surely worth its weight in credits." The scrap lord's interest was piqued. He approached the robot, securing a magnifying glass to his right eye. With practiced precision, he knelt down and began to scrutinize the fallen machine, his hands moving deftly over its surface. The crowd watched in hushed anticipation as the scrap lord examined the ancient robot. He pried open a panel on its back, revealing the emerald power crystal nestled within. The gem glowed faintly, its green light casting eerie shadows on his face. "This is quite a find," he muttered, mostly to himself. "The crystal alone is worth a small fortune." He glanced up at Taylia, a shrewd look in his eyes. "You've brought us something of great value, warrior. I'll give you a fair price, rest assured." Taylia crossed her arms, her posture relaxed, but her eyes alert. "How fair are we talking, Scrap Lord?" The man stood, dusting off his hands. "I can offer you 5,000 credits for the crystal, and another 3,000 for the rest of the robot," he said, his tone businesslike. "There's always a market for these relics." Taylia considered the offer, her mind calculating quickly. "Make it 10,000 credits total," she countered. "The crystal might be worth more than you think, and the robot's parts could fetch a high price on the black market." The Scrap Lord eyed her for a moment, then nodded. "Agreed. 10,000 credits it is." He extended a hand, and Taylia grasped it firmly, sealing the deal. "Pleasure doing business with you," she said, releasing his hand. The Scrap Lord's apprentice came running up with a rickety cart, the wheels creaking under the weight of their burden. He and another helper heaved the defeated robot onto the cart, its limbs hanging lifelessly over the edges. Taylia followed behind, her hand clutching her wounded shoulder, blood dripping steadily to the dusty ground. As they made their way through the colony, Talia's eyes flicked to the small shops and street vendors that lined the narrow streets. The market was bustling despite the late hour, lanterns casting a warm glow over the wares displayed on makeshift stalls. The scent of exotic spices mixed with the metallic tang of machinery, a blend that was uniquely Alrayan. The Scrap Lord glanced over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing as he saw the trail of blood Taylia left behind. "You need to get that sealed, young warrior," he said, his voice gruff, but not unkind. "You're losing a lot of blood." Taylia nodded, her face pale but determined. "I'll take my payment first and make my way to the medical center," she replied. "But more importantly, I need to find the chariot smith." The Scrap Lord nodded, respecting her priorities. "He's at the far end of the market, past the spice traders," he said. "I'll have one of my boys take you there after we settle up." They soon arrived at the Scrap Lord's shop, a sprawling building made of corrugated metal and reinforced with salvaged parts from countless starships. The interior was a chaotic maze of gears, wires, and half-assembled machines. The air was thick with the scent of oil and ozone, and the hum of machinery was constant. The apprentice and his helper unloaded the robot from the cart, laying it on a metal table for the Scrap Lord to inspect further. Taylia waited, leaning against a workbench, her hand pressing harder against her wound to staunch the bleeding. The Scrap Lord disappeared into a back room and returned with a small lockbox. He opened it to reveal stacks of credits, the dull gleam of the coins reflecting the overhead lights. 10,000 credits, as agreed, he said, handing over the payment. Taylia took the credits, nodding in appreciation. "Thank you," she said, tucking the money into a pouch at her belt. "Now, about the chariot smith." The Scrap Lord signaled to another young man who was busy sorting through a pile of spare parts. "Norin, take her to the chariot smith," he ordered, "and make sure she gets to the medical center afterward." Norin nodded, setting down his work and wiping his hands on a rag. "This way," he said to Taylia, leading her back out into the bustling market. As they walked, Talia's vision began to blur slightly from the blood loss, but she kept her focus on Norin, determined to reach the chariot smith. They passed by stalls, selling shimmering fabrics, exotic fruits, and intricate jewelry, the vendors calling out to potential customers. At last, they arrived at a small, well-organized workshop at the end of the market. The sign above the door read, Mennick's Chariot Smith. The sound of metal striking metal echoed from within, along with the hiss of a welding torch. Norrin stepped inside, calling out to the smith. Mennick, we've got a customer for you. A burly man with a soot-streaked face and a thick beard emerged from behind a half-assembled star chariot. My chariot is stranded outside the colony. I need it fixed as soon as possible, Taylia says. Mennick's eyes widened when he saw Taylia's condition. By the stars, you're hurt, he exclaimed. Let's get you patched up first, then we'll see about your chariot. Taylia shook her head, though her strength was waning. My chariot is stranded. Mennick nodded, his expression serious. I understand. Let's get you to the medical center first, and I'll send a team to retrieve your chariot right away. Taylia finally relented, allowing Norrin and Mennick to guide her to the medical center. The three traveled through the colony, weaving through the bustling market and the narrow, winding streets. The sounds of commerce and conversation filled the air, blending with the hum of machinery and the occasional burst of laughter. Norrin and Mennick moved quickly, their concern for Taylia evident in their hurried steps and the way they glanced back at her every few moments. As they approached the entrance to the medical center, a modest building with a faded sign and a row of emergency lights flickering dimly, Taylia's vision blurred further. The pain in her shoulder pulsed with every heartbeat, and her legs felt increasingly unsteady. She gritted her teeth, trying to stay conscious, but the world around her began to spin. Just as they reached the doors, Taylia's strength finally gave out. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed, the last thing she saw being the worried expressions on Norrin and Mennick's faces. "Catch her!" Mennick shouted. The two men together eased her to the ground. A medic, alerted by the commotion, rushed out of the building. "What happened?" he asked, quickly assessing the situation. "She's wounded and losing blood fast," Norrin explained. "We need to get her inside now." The medic nodded and signaled for a stretcher. Within moments, a team of medics had lifted Taylia onto it and carried her inside. As the hours passed, the colony outside continued with its daily rhythm, unaware of the small but significant victory that had taken place just beyond its borders. When Taylia finally awoke, the first thing she did was reach for her gear. Her hand closed around the lockbox, and she quickly opened it, her eyes scanning the contents. She breathed a sigh of relief as she counted her credits, ensuring that every last one was still there. Satisfied, she set the lockbox aside and began to rise from the bed. Taylia tore the bedclothes from her body, exposing her exotic, muscular form. Her skin glowed in the soft light of the medical center, her long red hair cascading over her shoulders like a fiery waterfall. With a determined expression, she reached for her breastplate, its metallic surface gleaming. She fastened it securely, feeling the familiar weight against her chest. Next, she slipped into her animal skin loincloth, the soft fur brushing against her skin. As she finished dressing, the door to her room opened, and a medic walked in. He froze for a moment, taken aback by the sight of her in the midst of arming herself. "You're awake," he said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and surprise. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," Taylia replied, her tone brisk. "I need to find the chariot smith. My star chariot won't fix itself." "I would suggest you stay here for monitoring, but I don't think you'd take my advice," says the medic. "I don't have time to take it easy," Taylia said, her eyes fierce. "I have a mission to complete." She strode past the medic, her movements fluid and purposeful, despite the recent battle. As she made her way through the medical center, the staff and other patients looked up, some with admiration, and others with curiosity. Her presence was commanding, her resolve clear. She pushed open the door and stepped out into the colony's bustling streets. Taylia made her way towards the chariot smith's workshop, her mind focused on the task ahead. The colony's residents gave her a wide berth, their earlier fear replaced by awe as they realized who she was. The scrap lord had already spread the word about her victory over the metallic ghost. When she reached the workshop, she found the chariot smith, Menek, waiting outside. "Ah, you're awake." Menek begins before he's cut off. "I need my star chariot fixed as soon as possible. The power crystal is depleted, and there's a mechanical problem draining the battery." "I know," says Menek. "I had my team retrieve your chariot yesterday." "Yesterday?" Talia's eyes widen in surprise. "How many days have I slept?" "The scrap lord's apprentice and I helped you to the medical center 2 days ago." Taylia looks at him, shocked. 2 days. It's almost ready to go. Your onboard surge regulator was burned out, causing the core matrix to drag more power from the crystal. Give my team another hour or so, and we'll have it fixed for you. Taylia smiles and nods. "I believe I have enough credits, Chariot Smith. 300 will cover the costs for repairs. That's all I ask. Thank you for slaying that ghost," Menek says with a grateful smile. Taylia nods again. "Thank you, Menek. I appreciate it. Where is the inn from here?" she asks. Menek points down the bustling street. "Just follow this road and take a left at the end. You'll see a large sign for the Lunar Rest Inn." "Thanks," Taylia says, and starts down the road, the townspeople parting for her as she passes. The lively streets are filled with vendors selling various goods, from fresh produce to intricate alien artifacts. A few moments later, Taylia pushes open the door, stepping into the warm, welcoming atmosphere of the Lunar Rest Inn. The scent of roasted meat and freshly baked bread fills the air, mingling with the sound of cheerful chatter. Taylia makes her way to the bar, where a stout woman with silver hair and a kind smile greets her. "When I told you that story about the metallic ghost, I told you to be careful, not to go hunting it." The old woman laughed as she poured Taylia a drink. Taylia joined in the laughter and asked for the strongest mead. The old woman filled a mug and handed it to Taylia. As Taylia reached for her purse, the innkeeper stopped her. "No, darling. This one is on me." Taylia smiled and slid into a stool, savoring the rich taste of the mead. She ordered another round, along with some meat and bread, enjoying the moment. Her purse was fat, her desires clear, and so far, nothing had gone wrong. "Hey, you! I'm talking to you, girl." Taylia turned to see a group of 5 men, dirty and clad in looted armor. They were armed, and their presence had the patrons wary, if not outright scared. "Seems to me like you've got a lot of creds here." "Gimme that, and nobody needs to be hurt," said the leader, a bearded, overweight man brandishing a large axe. He eyed Taylia with a look that promised more trouble than just her purse. Boss, this here is the warrior that took out the metallic ghost in the wasteland," one of the sidekicks blurted out, excitement evident in his voice. Taylia couldn't help but smile. Her reputation was spreading. "Ah, so you got quite a bit of credits there, girl. Now hand them over," the leader demanded. "That I can't do. Bills to pay," Taylia replied with a smirk. "Listen, girl. Notice no one here has come to your rescue, even though you've quickly become a savior around here." The fat, bearded man leaned in close, his breath rancid. "We are feared around here, girl. We run this colony. Now give us the credits." Inspecting her empty mug for a few seconds, a smile crept across Talia's face. The leader and his sidekicks laughed, but their laughter was abruptly cut short as Taylia smashed her mug into the leader's face. The surprise blow left him dizzy, and Taylia stood, grabbing her stool as a makeshift weapon. The remaining 4, undeterred by their leader's predicament, charged her. But Taylia was ready. She swung the stool with both hands, crashing it down on one thug's head and knocking him out cold. The other 3 pressed their attack, pinning her against the counter. Their uncoordinated assault left openings, and Taylia took advantage. She drove a powerful kick into one man's stomach, sending him crashing into another. Then, with a mighty swing, she shattered the stool over the third man's face. With the last 2 dazed, Taylia leaped onto one, delivering a flurry of punches until he lay unconscious on the floor. The final thug, seeing his comrades defeated, looked at his sword, then at Taylia, and dropped his weapon. "Fleck this," he muttered, attempting to flee. Taylia grabbed him by the collar. The man squealed in terror. "You'll get those 4 out, but you'll also empty their pockets for me and for the innkeeper here." "For the stool," Taylia said, her voice cold. The man nodded frantically and set to work, dragging his unconscious friends out and emptying their pockets as instructed. The leader yelled out, "Stop, you idiot!" as he brandished his axe in front of him. "You dare make fools of us, girl," he roared, rushing towards Taylia. Taylia dodged his first attack, swiftly drawing her sword. The patrons began to move and flee the inn, sensing the escalating danger. The bearded man swung again, and Taylia deflected the attack with her sword, staggering slightly from the impact. He swung again, and she dodged, finding herself backed against the bar. As he brought his axe down towards her head, Taylia dropped to the ground, trying to block the blow. The axe buried itself into the bar, getting stuck in the wood. Seizing the opportunity, Taylia rose to her feet, and with a swift, precise motion, sliced the man's head from his neck. Blood sprayed from the gaping wound as his body fell to its knees before collapsing into a pool of blood. Taylia looked to the innkeeper. "I apologize," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. She then turned to the remaining henchmen, who stood frozen in shock. "Hey!" she yelled. "Clean this shit-aging clag up, and take your trash with you!" Her voice echoed through the now nearly empty inn. 2 of the henchmen, now conscious, scrambled to comply. They stripped off their clothing to mop up their fallen leader's blood as best they could before dragging his body out of the inn. The last henchman picked up the severed head and quickly backed out with his head down, fear etched on his face. The innkeeper watched in a mixture of awe and fear as Taylia wiped the blood from her sword and sheathed it, the tension in the room slowly dissipating. With the immediate threat gone, Taylia returned to her stool and ordered another drink. The innkeeper, hands shaking slightly, poured her a fresh mug of mead. "No charge for this one either," the old woman said, her voice wavering. And with that, true champions of the cause, our story has come to an end. I thank you for spending this time with us, and I look forward to seeing you again. Let your thoughts on the story be known in the comments. I truly look forward to reading them. So, until next time, please like, comment, and subscribe. And until our paths cross again, I have been your host, Arius. See you in the shadows, my love.